Back in the garage, back in the garage, in the garage, in the garage, back in the garage today, back in the garage today. What's up guys, back in the garage today. I feel like it's been a long time since I've said that. Anyway, you can probably tell I've got my 1290 Super Adventure on the lift behind me. Gonna be working on it today. Gonna at least start filming an entire maintenance series on the bike, so stay tuned for those videos. Today's video is just going to be about how to remove the fuel tank and how to put the fuel tank back on. I did go over this in a video from last year. I believe it was the Cyclops LED headlight swap. But I want to make things a little bit easier to search, and if you need to know how to remove the fuel tank and put it back on, you're going to learn how to do that today. I'm also going to be filming all the other maintenance stuff today while the fuel tank is off, so look for that series of videos coming up, but let's get to work. First thing you're going to need to do is remove the passenger seat. Now a reminder, if you're working on a 1290 Super Adventure, it does have the heated seat that you're going to have to undo back here before removing it. Next thing you're going to do, remove the rider seat. Same deal, don't forget to unplug the heated seat wire. If you're working on an 1190 or a 1090 that doesn't have this, no big deal. And by the way, most things are going to be about the same for the 1090 or 1190. There might be some small differences, but for the most part, this should get you through. Is remove the crash bars. We're going to start with the 2 screws back here in the center. I have no idea why, because almost every other fastener on this bike is Torx. But we do have Allen's here. I believe this is a 5mm. We got to get these removed. So be careful. There is a nut on the back of these. All right. So over on the left-hand side of the bike, the next 4 screws we're going to remove are these 2 and these 2. These are the clamp halves. We'll get those out, and I'll show you the next step. Okay. So with the top half clamp removed, now we're going to move on to the final bolt, which is this one right here. Now, I have the factory KTM skid plate on, so I have a spacer in here, and it's a slightly different, slightly longer bolt than what yours may be. Mine is a hex head. I don't remember what it was from the factory, but either way, just remove this bolt, and then we're going to be able to pop this crash bar off the left-hand side. Now, I have mentioned this a couple of times. We're working on the left-hand side because if you can see back here, it's over top of the right-hand side, so when we go to pull this crash bar off in a minute, makes it a little bit easier than trying to start on the other side. Now it's a fairly simple matter to remove the bar. Now take your time. It should. The problem I'm going to run into is I have this piece here from my skid plate which holds it up a little bit, but there we go. There's the spacer. If you don't have the skid plate, this thing comes off a hell of a lot easier. And now you can see what the bike looks like with the crash bar off. Also, I should have mentioned, get yourself out a piece of pasteboard or a blanket or something to lay your parts down on. That way you don't have to worry about scratching them up on your garage floor. Now we're on the right-hand side of the bike. Same deal. We're going to remove these clamp halves here. We're going to remove this bolt. We're going to pop this off. I'm not going to show all that because it's exactly the same as the left-hand side. Figures, the side I don't film basically just fell right off with ease, but anyway, got the crash bars off. The next step is to remove the side covers, which are these pieces on each side, so I'll show you how to do that next. The first screw we're going to take out is this one right here. That is a Torx head. With the top one removed, the next one we're going to remove is this one right here, and keep in mind you do have to do this on both sides. We have 2 more screws to remove, this one and this one. Now this cover should pop right off of the side, but you do need to disconnect the cornering light. Alright, so that's what it looks like with the side cover removed. You can see right here I disconnected the cornering light. It's really, really easy to get to. Now I'm going to move around and do the same thing on the left-hand side of the bike. Next up, we're going to remove the tank cover. That consists of this screw here, this screw here, this screw here, and then 2 in the same place just on the other side of the tank. Just FYI, that front one is actually a 8mm socket or wrench, whatever you're going to use. The rest are Torx head. Alright, so with all the fasteners removed, it's a relatively simple process to pop this this tank cover up off the tank. There you go. We need to remove the mask spoiler. All right, so the first screw we need to take out is, it's gonna be tough to see, but it's this one right here. All right, so the next screw we're gonna take out is this one right here. Okay, so with the fasteners removed, you can basically just pop this out. I've got mine fed in here a little bit, and I pull it out there. You are gonna have to disconnect the turn signal. I like using a small flat bit on this connector. Just push down on that tab. Make sure you unplug that and don't just pull on it. Also, be sure to study this a little bit because you'll see there's a little tab in here. So when we go to put it back together later, we want to make sure we get these things lined up properly. Same exact procedure on this side. We're going to get this screw out that's in here. Then we're going to pull this one. This will pop off, and then we'll just undo the turn signal. All right, we've got everything removed that we need to remove in order to remove the fuel tank itself. But we do have some stuff to unhook from the fuel tank first. Let's get right to it. This is probably one of the most important steps if you don't want fuel all over the place. Turn off the fuel cocks. These are these little things right here that I am twisting. Twist that all the way closed. That way when we go to unhook the fuel line here in a minute or two, we won't take a bath in gasoline. Just a heads up, they are on both sides of the bike. So once you turn off the one on the left-hand side, come on over to the right-hand side. Turn that one off too. They may be a little bit grimy. You might have to spray them with some stuff because they've gotten road grime and stuff on them. These actually aren't too bad. Just make sure they're good and tight. Don't put a wrench or anything on them or pliers or anything like that. Just do them by hand. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is unhook the fuel hose. There's a little clamp right here. Now I'm gonna use some needle nose pliers. Squeeze that in. You just kind of want to work it back. There you go. Now we're just going to pull this right off of here. You may have a little bit of gasoline spill, but you shouldn't have too much. We're going to do the same exact thing on this side of the tank. Remove the fuel hose right here. All right, so I did spring a bit of a fuel leak because this fuel cock over here wasn't quite closed. Got it all closed off. You can see there's no more fuel dripping. Let's move on to the next step. It's going to be very difficult to see, but the next thing we're going to do, I'm going to put a little arrow on it. That's the tab we're going to push in to disconnect the fuel line. KTM recommends spraying some compressed air in there first to clear out all the dirt, because the last thing we're going to want is dirt in our fuel line. I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to reach up in there and disconnect it. I'm not going to attempt to film the next part because there's no way I can fit a camera up in there, but you can see the little tab right there. That's what we're going to push in, and that will disconnect the fuel line. There's what it looks like disconnected. I'm pull. There's the piece you push in on. You are going to have to pull on this with a little bit of force in order to get it apart though. All right, next thing we're gonna do is down here, there is a rubber tie. We're gonna pop, come on camera. We're gonna pop that off, and then we're just going to disconnect this connector right here. All right, we got the connector disconnected. All right, now we're up here on top of the fuel tank. This is your fuel sensor. I actually shot a video about how to fix that thing. If it's not working right, I'll link up in the upper right-hand corner. Anyway, disconnect that plug right there. All right, next thing we're gonna do is disconnect the bleeder hoses. We got this one over here, and we have this one right here. Let's get these off. FYI, after you slide that back, this one pops off real easy, and this one just pulls straight off. Now we have 3 screws to take out. We've got this one right here. We also have one on the other side, and we have this one right here. Let's get those removed. The 2 on the side are Torx T40s, and the one up here is a, this works, 6mm hex. Now, if you follow this step by step, everything I just showed you, we are now ready to take the tank off. Mine is full of fuel, so it's gonna be a little on the heavy side. The only thing I can really tell you advice-wise, when you're taking this off, watch the inside here because you do have some plastic and stuff you could hit. It's gonna make it a little more difficult to lift out here. I'm just gonna let the camera run. We'll probably fast forward a little bit, but you can kind of see how difficult it is or how easy it is to remove. Sometimes they're not bad, sometimes they are. This is one of those times where it wasn't too bad. All right guys, so I have a lot of stuff left to do on this bike before I go to put that back on. I'm gonna take a quick break, go grab something cold to drink, and then I'm gonna come back, do all the work I need to do, and you guys probably won't see that work because I'll just come back here in a few minutes and show you how to put the tank back on. All right guys, so fast forward like a day, and yes, I'm still wearing the same clothes. I've got everything done I want to do to this bike. I checked the valves, I changed the spark plugs, I put on the new air box, I got rid of all the SAS delete kit. Now I gotta put my tank and everything back on, and that's what you guys came here to see. So let's get to it. All right, so the first thing we need to do to put the tank back on is put the tank back on. All right, so we have 3 bolts going back into the tank. This one goes in up top here. You have these 2 side bolts that are gonna go right here on each side. Okay, so with these fasteners all hooked up, next thing we want to do is hook up our vent hoses. You've got the one on this side, you also have the one on this side. Next thing we want to do is plug this back into your fuel sending unit. All right, now we're back down here underneath the bike because we got to get the fuel lines hooked back up, the connectors hooked back up, and a few other things. So let's get started. First thing we're going to do is hook this fuel line back up. You got this piece right here. You may remember it from earlier. It's got the metal piece. And that connects back into the fuel line right there. All right, you can see we got the fuel line hooked back up. Next thing we're gonna do is plug this connector back in, and we're just gonna kind of zip tie that stuff up out of the way. I know it just said zip tie, but as long as you didn't lose it, there's a little rubber hose tie. Next thing we're gonna do is hook the fuel line onto the fuel cock right here, and then also make sure you get the hose clamp on there. All right, we got this side clamped on. Now we're gonna go over to the other side of the bike. Now with the fuel lines hooked up on both sides, we want to twist open the fuel cocks and open back up the fuel. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but I hear the fuel. Opening these things back up, you'll hear it rushing a little bit. All right, so we're gonna start out with the spoiler mask. You can see I've already got it plugged in here. I will tuck that plug into the bodywork a little bit further. Just be careful, you do have a little nipple here on the end that's gonna plug into right there. You also have a couple other little plastic clips that need to go into place, right? So just be careful putting this piece on. So it's all kind of snapped into place right now. Now we're going to put this screw in here, and there's one on this side. Next up is the tank cover. Remember with the tank cover, we've got this one that goes in here, we got one here, we got one back here, and then we got the 2 on the other side. All right, so we got the tank cover installed. Next up, we're gonna grab the side covers. All right, so with the side cover, don't forget we have the cornering lights on the 1290 that we need to plug in, and then we just pop this on the bike. It literally just slides right into place. We've got a fastener that goes in there, we've got one that goes in there, and then when we come down here, we've got one here, and we've got one up here. So get those fasteners in, and then you're done with this side cover. Just a quick recap, we have this bolt, and then if we look down here, we have that one, and we also have this one up here in the corner that needs to go back on. All right, we've got all the body work back on, minus the seats. Next, we need to get the crash bars put on. We are going to start out on the right-hand side of the bike. We start out on the right-hand side of the bike because the left-hand crash bar fits over top of this one. We gotta make sure this hole goes up over top of here. My biggest thing is I've got the crash bar, or the skid plate on here, and it takes me a minute or 2 to get this piece in there because of the spacer. So we may time lapse this, but it's not really difficult. It just takes a little bit of finagling. Shit. It fell right out of there, didn't it? Oh, that goes right there. Alright, so that wasn't too bad. Now we're gonna, I'm gonna throw this bolt in just to hold this, and then we'll work back here on the clamps. Back here on the clamps, pretty straightforward. We're not tightening anything yet until everything is lined up. All we're doing is just getting them started. Alright, so pretty much same deal on this side, but since the other side was so easy, I'm sure this one will be a big pain in the butt. Let's find out. Hell, I must just be getting better at this. Same deal, we're just gonna put the clamps on, but we're not gonna tighten anything up. Alright, now we wanna get this bolt run in, make sure it's threaded, and then we can start tightening things up. Okay, before we actually start tightening everything else up, remember we had these screws with the nut on the back of them that went right in here. So we just gotta line the crash bars up, get those run through, and then we can go back to tightening up the bolts and the clamps over here. All right, we got those 2 screws put in. I've got this one all tightened down. Now I'm just gonna tighten up these half clamps, do the same thing on the other side, and we'll be done with the crash bars. All right guys, we're almost done. All we have left to do is put the rider seat and then the passenger seat on. It's really, really simple. Just a reminder though, if you are on the 1290 Super Adventure, to plug in your heated seat wire. And with the seat bag on, that's it. All right guys, so that's it. This weekend I managed to change the spark plugs, check the valve clearance, put the Rottweiler air intake on, get rid of all the emissions crap. Still got to change the oil and do a few other routine maintenance things to the bike, but all the big stuff is done. So I filmed a bunch of videos. We'll see how it all works out. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider hitting that subscribe button. If you got any questions about what you watched today, let me know in the comment section below. I will do my best to answer them. And as always, I'll talk to you again soon.